Closing segment here on Overtime. Mark, this is a really interesting week. We wanted to have the AP poll up before the committee makes their selection tomorrow. A big kind of point of notice, Ohio State jumping Alabama before their big matchup against Michigan.
Yeah, I think that when you look at Alabama and Ohio State's just dominant. It's absolute dominance, 49-0 at the half. You have to consider that if Alabama would have won by like 20, I don't think Ohio State would have jumped them.
Right.
But when you consider that C.J. Stroud played the way he did, 6 touchdowns, 432 yards, and maybe a lot of people have him jumping in front of Bryce Young for the Heisman. That's why they're ahead of Alabama in the AP poll.
100%. As we come back here, we got a special chance to interview one of your buddies up north, Ryan Hickey. Talk about it, Ryan.
Ryan Hickey and I worked for a Worldwide Sports Radio Network, and we did the Morning Boys from October 2019 to March 2020. When the pandemic hit, we had to stop doing broadcasts. And Ryan is a guy that went to school in one of the prestigious Big Ten universities. Right. So we asked for his opinion on some of the things going on in the Big Ten this season and for this week's big matchup between Ohio State and Michigan.
We're bringing on Ryan because he is a Big Ten aficionado. And we have some questions for him about the upcoming weekend between Ohio State and Michigan. So, Ryan, what you've seen so far in the Big Ten?
Mark, I mean, I'll be honest here. I thought this was actually the first time in a long time where it was not Ohio State's conference to win, right? We saw in week 2 right away, Oregon not only beat Ohio State in Ohio State, but I thought showed some serious flaws going forward that would kind of trip the Buckeyes up and not have them be as potent as we've seen the last few years. Their run defense was shredded by C.J. Verdell in Oregon. Their offensive line wasn't really getting a good push. C.J. Stroud looked like a guy who was, making his debut as a starting quarterback. And I really thought a lot of those issues would persist throughout the rest of the year. And obviously, they haven't had exactly the toughest schedule going forward. We've seen the Big Ten be up and down. Like I said, Penn State started off well and then kind of fallen off. And Michigan State, we saw last weekend coming in on a high, and their pass secondary didn't stand a chance. So Ohio State, even though they are still, a flawed team, maybe not the best Ohio State team we've seen, unlike let's say 2019, that was a really talented team on both sides of the ball. I still think there's some issues there. With that said, Michigan has had a really good year. They have really had a big bounce back here under Jim Harbaugh. The thing, though, with Michigan, it scares me, and even going to this weekend, I don't think Michigan's going to win, even though they're at home, is the speed aspect has been really the biggest difference in this matchup. There's a reason why Ohio State has absolutely dominated this rivalry almost the last 2 decades, because Michigan's not fast enough. They have great defensive ends that get after the quarterback. Their linebackers are ranging. They play good, tough Big Ten football. But when you have tremendous receivers like Chris Olave, like Garrett Wilson, like Jackson Smith-Njigba, you can't catch up to them. And their offense is too potent, where Michigan, I don't think, will be able, just like in previous years, to slow down the Buckeye offense. I don't trust Michigan in a game that turns into a shootout. I don't think they can keep up. So I think we'll see another year where the Big Ten is going to go Ohio State's way. I thought this was the year that they were going to get got. And Ohio State continues to do what Ohio State does. Reload, continue to play good football, and show the Big Ten that it's them and everyone else.
And what do you expect if the winner of this game is the front runner to make the college football playoff and represent the Big Ten? What do you see going forward for the Big Ten championship game? Is there any chance that the winner of this game gets knocked off?
I would say no. The Big Ten West has been a little bit of a mess this year, where now Wisconsin's a team that's really coming in hot and playing some good football. But kind of the same thing we're talking about Ohio State and Michigan. I do think Ohio State's going to win. So I think that now you look into the Big Ten title game next week, whether it's Iowa, whether it's Wisconsin, I just don't see either their offense or the defense being able to keep up with the Buckeyes. So for me, this, like you mentioned, not only is the de facto Big Ten East championship to determine the winner who's going to the Big Ten title game, this is a playoff game. I do think the winner will make the college football playoffs. So this is basically a semifinal, if you will, into the college football playoff.
Absolutely. I mean, I thought you made a great point, a lot of great points about Ohio State's speed on offense. But there one factor that might have given some teams or people concerns about them was their defense early in the year. Do you think they've strengthened that enough to defeat a very good Michigan offense that put up 59 this last week?
I do. Now, part of that is also, we saw kind of last week the blueprint for Ohio State's defense is you get out to an early lead, all of a sudden you take the run away. I still think Ohio State's vulnerable in the run game. They limited Kenneth Walker, the second leading rusher in the country, last week, to just 25 yards on 6 carries. But that 6 carries is obviously the big factor there, because the entire game Michigan blinked and they're already down 4, or Michigan State blinked, it's 14-0 already, and they got away from the run game quick. That is going to be Ohio State's best friend this week, is getting out to an early lead. 14-0, 17-7, and get Michigan out of the run game. That's the one thing they do really well. Hassan Haskins, Blake Corum have been tremendous this year. But you're going to make Cade McNamara throw 30, 35, 40 times a game. I like Ohio State's chances, even with the defense that has gotten better. But to your point, I still think is flawed, especially in the run game. They're facing an elite run team that is Michigan.
Excellent points there by Ryan, and obviously thanks for having him on. And you also have a great point there about that Michigan run, or the Ohio State run game. He was leading and going to, especially after that big game last week.
Yeah, after allowing 230 yards rushing per game in their first 2 games against Tulsa and Oregon, they've allowed 74.1 rushing yards per game in their last 9, including holding the NCAA's leading rusher at the time, Kenneth Walker Jr. There's 25 yards on 6 carries, like you said. Thing to notice, though, Michigan and Wisconsin, 1-2 in the Big Ten in rushing. Wisconsin, number 1, 229 yards per game.
Right.
Michigan, number 2, 218 yards per game. If they get off to a good start running the ball, could pose a little bit of problem for Ohio State.
Exactly, and that Ohio State defense will really have to look out for that as well if they try to run the football. But like you said, like Ryan said, they get out to a big lead. You take that off the board altogether. Special thanks to Ryan Hickey for joining us on our program for that. Always special thanks to Mark as well. We'll see him a little bit later on this week, and we will see you coming up tomorrow night here on Overtime.